This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek in Pacifica. And there have been some important developments in Argentina with the Javier Milei government. He has been implementing privatization, repressive attacks against the left, against unions, against workers. And just yesterday, there was a demonstration against the attack on pensioners in Argentina. They're facing hunger, a large number of pensioners as a result of cutbacks. And joining us today is Guillermo Kane. He's a member of the Buenos Aires Parliament, a deputy. He is also a university professor at the University of Buenos Aires and also a member of PO, the Workers' Party in Argentina. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
So, Guillermo, why don't you give us an update about what's going on in Argentina? Milei had promised that he was going to make all these changes and make Argentina a thriving country, bring back its glory, its good days. What's the reality in Argentina, and how are workers organizing in Argentina to defend themselves against the attacks?
Well, the situation is very bad economically and socially. Milei campaigned saying his policies of violent cutbacks in the state and layoffs in the state were going to generate a boom in private economy and in private jobs, and quite the contrary is happening. Most of the layoffs we've had, which are around 400,000 layoffs, have been in the private sectors, particularly in construction has completely shut down, but also a very good amount of layoffs in the industry and commerce, apart from the over 40,000 layoffs in the national state that he has carried out. But the most serious impact of the recession that is already underway in Argentina is in the private sectors. We're already at the same level of suspensions of industrial workers that we were at the high point of the quarantine. So without, of course, any external catastrophe happening in Argentina, apart from the impact of the economical crisis. So there was already much talk in different sectors of the bourgeoisie, both locally and, for example, officers of the IMF, saying that there is a need for a new devaluation, among other things. So the dollar is freely exchanged, which is another of the campaign promises Javier Milei has made. And even though they've all their political careers campaigned against limits of exchange of currency and other economic limits, Javier Milei has publicly said that it is impossible now to lift the limit of exchange on the dollars because it would be a great devaluation and a great, how do you say this, a great new jump in inflation. And evidently, they consider that they could not govern under these conditions. The IMF is also very worried. That's why they've been meeting with the bourgeois opposition, with the trade union bureaucracy, and with other sectors to discuss conditions of governability, of stability for the Milei government. And we have to say that, so this situation might explain some of the political crisis that we've been living these past few weeks in Argentina, as the bourgeois opposition, which has made many agreements with Milei, has voted the Ley de Bases in June, which has, big chapters of economic reforms, of labor reforms, of sacking of natural resources, has now had several votes against the Milei government on things that may not be as structural as Ley de Bases, but are generating political problems for the Milei government. For example, they have voted an increase in university budgets and salaries in one of the chambers of Congress, in the lower chamber. The Senate hasn't confirmed this. They have repealed or annulled a decree of Milei, which gives 100 million pesos to espionage, to state espionage. And this has been also repealed by one of the chambers and has to be confirmed by the Senate. And both chambers of Congress have voted an increase for pensioners who are massively under the extreme poverty levels Now, the left front that we are a part of has not supported this increase because it's very small. It's almost ridiculous. It's an 8% increase in two quotas, which is around 25,000 peso increase at the minimum level, which is what over half of the pensioners are receive. It's that would be it's under $150 of increase. It's a very low increase for the economic hardships that the pensioners are facing. However, Milei has publicly said that he's going to veto this increase. So an interesting development that's happened yesterday and might be part of the struggles that are happening is that there was a march with thousands against the veto of Javier Milei, which has not been carried out yet, but he has publicly announced he's going to. And with dozens of organizations of pensioners leading at the forefront. And as we've had recently, you know, with demonstrations in Buenos Aires, there was police repression, there were police beat up, you know, elder workers who were at the forefront of this demonstration, but the march pushed on and occupied the Plaza de Mayo up to the very steps of the government house of the Casa Rosada, the Pink House. So it was an important demonstration and a show that it is a problem that's very dear to public opinion, and vetoing an increase, even a very moderate one, and repressing pensioners with police is generating criticism from even sectors of right-wing bourgeois opposition who are very conservative.
Well, wasn't that Milei's promise and the security minister that they're going to stop these protests? They were going to stop these demonstrations and keep peace in Buenos Aires and Argentina. Didn't he promise that he was going to stop
it? Yeah. They're saying this is a big victory of theirs, that many demonstrations can't be carried out because the city is militarized against demonstrations, and there have been arrests and political persecution and police repression. But they are not able to drown out social conflict completely, even though the trade union bureaucracy has been a big help to this plan of keeping. So two more things on the political crisis first, maybe, that have been important in the recent times. I want to tell you and our viewers, Steve. One more on the on the government party has been a big crisis around a visit to jail to see the military officers who were at the head of the killings during the dictatorship. And there was a delegation of congressmen of the Milei's party, La Libertad Avanza, who went to visit them, evidently as part of preparatory political work for putting out some sort of legal amnesty for the military from the last dictatorship. And the people they went to see are some of the most hated criminals in the country. For example, Alfredo Astiz, one of them, during the last years of the military dictatorship, infiltrated the Madres de Plaza de Mayo and was part of the members who marked the first leader of the Madres de Plaza de Mayo to be sequestered, to be kidnapped by the military dictatorship, and a very famous case also of two French nuns who were collaborating with the human rights organizations. So he's a very, very hated repressor, and they went to see him and a dozen of his colleagues in a federal prison. And this led to a big confusion and division within the ranks of Milei, because neither he nor the vice president, who is directly linked with the repressors from the dictatorship, Victoria Villarroel, took responsibility for this. It was organized through the security minister, Patricia Bullrich, and through the president of Congress, Martín Menem, but they did not take responsibility either. And what happened is that the individual some of the congresswomen who were there were upset that they were made to be publicly responsible for this and not the leaders of their party. So this opened up a division, And this weekend, for example, one of these congresswomen who is now expelled from their caucus made public the WhatsApp group where a pro-military priest and these government officers were preparing the laws to send home the convicted murderers of the dictatorship, to send to their homes. So this is a big political crisis which has to do with clashes between President Milei and Vice President Villarroel as well, who sectors of Peronism support as a sort of, as a figure to replace Milei in government, promoting a supposed impeachment trial, which, has gone nowhere, but there are sectors of Peronism who say Villarroel is a nationalist, she's not like Milei, and to say this as a good thing is a sort of a common element with Peronism. Then on the other hand, the reason that Milei has been able to, even in the midst of all this economic crisis and political crisis, sustain himself is that Peronism, which is the main opposition force, is even worse off. In an investigation on corruption during the Alberto Fernandez government, the phones of some of his close collaborators were taken by the justice system, and the several personal situations regarding Alberto Fernandez, the most important of which is that there's proof that he systematically beat his wife while she was pregnant in the government house. So it's an absolutely shameful situation, which should be condemned, but which has the double character that during the Alberto Fernandez government, Peronism co-opted most of the women's movement, and he proclaimed publicly that his presidency was the end of patriarchy. So it's a very demoralizing thing that the right-wing government is using this against feminism, and at the same time they say they are very concerned about violence against women, absurdly, when they have always been against the women's movements and its demands. And from the left, we are explaining how the state co-optation of these movements denaturalizes them. And women's movements need to go back to developing on an independent scale, which is how, for example, legal abortion was won in recent years in Argentina. But this is one element of several, which has Peronism growingly divided and ineffectual as an opposition, though, in a more general sense, they collaborate with Milei. Some sectors openly voting for his laws, and then, as we were saying before, demobilizing. They run the main union confederations, and in a moment of mass layoffs, of erosion of wages, they are not calling any new national strikes or demonstrations. There was only one demonstration called by unions with very relatively small delegations last month, and the day of San Cayetano, which is a Catholic saint of work. So that day they did a procession, but a very symbolic demonstration, which is not part of a plan of action that wants to impose any sort of demands on the government. So while this is going on, there are new attacks by the government against workers, and a lot of strikes of local strikes on a regional level or on a union level. So it is the bureaucracy is carrying out a terrible crime. One of these things was also voted in Congress and has had the support of sectors of Peronism and the rest of bourgeois opposition. Even the biggest center-left figure within Peronism, which is Juan Grabois, was a sort of Bernie Sanders. He was the opposition candidate in the primaries within the Peronist party. He is very close to the Vatican, to Pope Francis. And Juan Grabois has favored what they have voted, which is something called making education essential. What does this mean? It means outlawing strikes. And it does not mean raising the budgets, because public education has big problems in Argentina with infrastructure. I mean, the ceilings that fall. We even had schools that have blown up with killing 2 workers 6 years ago. So in the province of Buenos Aires. So we have huge problems that make students miss classes. They're not solving any of these, but what they are saying is that it is going to be illegal to carry out full strikes without, leaving at least 30% of the teachers giving classes. If this law is passed, which has already been voted by the lower chamber and has been publicly supported even by the center left of Peronism, there are strikes, teacher strikes all over the country against this, without the organization of the Peronist trade union bureaucracy, but led by the left. Very big strike in the province of Buenos Aires. A similar local legislation is being faced by a teacher strike in the province of Neuquén in the Patagonia, which is in its 7th week. And yesterday had a march of thousands of teachers in the street. Strikes for wages have opened up again in the universities all over the country, and in some important industrial sectors. For example, oil, food oil production, which is one of the main exports of the country, went into a prolonged strike, which has now been suspended by government, mandatory negotiations, has been suspended by the government, but we're in an important conflict. There are strikes against layoffs in the SUTNA, the tire workers union, that is also led by our party, by the PO, and important conflicts by unemployed workers organizations, the Piquetero movement, which, even though there have been 120 police raids against the Piquetero movements with these trumped up charges that want to present these neighborhood organizations as supposed criminal enterprises, and which have been facing growing legal persecution, particularly against the Polo Obrero, the neighborhood organization Piquetero movement, affiliated with our party, with the PO, but more in general against many organizations. They have been in the streets demanding food for the soup kitchens, demanding work, demanding subsidies for the unemployed, which Milei has frozen and has taken away from also many people. One last thing on the front of repression is that we had a good news yesterday while we were demonstrating with thousands in the downtown Buenos Aires. We had the news that one of the last detained for the demonstrations of the 12th of June, Daniela Colarco, also a Piquetero leader from MTR, which is an organization which shares a front of action with the Polo Obrero, was freed yesterday. So, she is now in her home, and we will continue to demonstrate for charges to be dropped against all those in struggle that are being persecuted by the Milei government.
And the United States, the Biden-Harris administration, have been supporting these privatization, the policies of the IMF in Argentina. They also wanted to have a military agreement, have a military base in Argentina. And I understand the Israelis have provided F-16 jets to the Argentine military, and that Milei wanted to increase the budget, the military budget in Argentina. What is the role of the United States, Israel, and militarization in Argentina? Any possibility of a military coup in Argentina?
Well, Milei, I think, is mostly offering himself to the United States as a tool in the region and on a geopolitical level, in exchange for financial aid or for new leases on the foreign debt, which is his biggest problem. So he wants to show himself as an enemy of what he calls communism, be it China, or other countries that are enemies of the United States, and even Lula, who has, though he's far from being an anti-imperialist, has a bit of his own level of play with a bit more independence from the United States. He considers a communist, and he has received many military visits, particularly from the head of the Southern Command, Laura Richardson, and has offered a new military base in the Tierra del Fuego, in the southernmost province of Argentina. He is, of course, also a fervent pro-Zionist and has even had a meeting of the National Cabinet of Argentina headed by the Israeli ambassador, which is actually illegal. Of course, a foreign power cannot be preside a government meeting, but he's fervently pro-Netanyahu and has recently had Hamas declared a terrorist organization as a way of persecuting Palestinian demonstrations and and aligning the state with the genocide of the Palestinian people. Well, we have no signs at this moment of a coup because it is through a government that's come from elections and which has Congress still open, that they're carrying out this offensive against workers. But they are definitely discussing trying to reinstitute the army as as a force used in internal security, which has been something that after the democratic demonstrations that jailed the military leaders of the last dictatorship, the bourgeoisie has been working towards. These laws of impunity for military leaders that the Milei government wants to push go in that direction. There's also repressive legislation presented in Congress, for example, instituting the possibility of the armed forces to participate in internal security. The defense minister was in National Congress 10 days ago promoting this legislation. And they're also promoting legislation that can lead young children up to the ages of 13 to be jailed. So they're definitely promoting, a militarization and a participation of the armed forces in these tasks. And we think it's very important to to promote democratic anti-repressive demonstrations. We are going to be, for example, demonstrating with the workers of the tire industry, who are, in several important conflicts against hundreds of layoffs in their factories, to the government house of the province of Buenos Aires, against the fact that this supposedly progressive Peronist government is sending mass presence of police to all their strikes and demonstrations. So this is not just Milei, but it's part of a more general policy of the different bourgeois parties against working class, actions and struggles. One thing I want to add on the Palestinian thing is we definitely have a very strong presence of Zionism persecuting those who are, denouncing genocide and demonstrating on that behalf. Several leaders of the left have had criminal charges brought up against them for supposed anti-Semitism, when of course socialists have nothing in common with anti-Semitism. What we're denouncing is Zionism. One of these cases against Alejandro Bolart, a leader of the MST, another of the parties of the left front, ended this week with the victory of the defense of Alejandro Bolart. These charges were dropped. And
what were the charges?
The discrimination and I think incitement to hate. And this was in the city court. A leader, the congresswoman of our party, of the PO, Vanina Biasi, is faced with religious discrimination charges in a federal court, which does not have a trial date as of yet, but which different Zionist organizations are pushing, are promoting, because Vanina has been very outspoken in denouncing the genocide in Palestine. So this is also part of the the persecution against the left and more combative organizations in which Zionism is very linked to the Milei government, and they work with together very closely.
And your party has also faced charges, the PO, and against your leadership, trying to repress you, that you're an illegal organization, and you're taking the initiative when a trial is to begin, or of calling an international action. Why don't you talk about the charges faced by your party leaders and the action that you're going to be working toward?
At September 24th, what's going to happen that day is that we are appealing against the charges that were confirmed by a judge, Judge Casanello, who is accusing the leaders of the Polo Obrero of supposed embezzlement of state funds, which is completely trumped up charges. The court has refused to receive the hundreds and hundreds of folders of information of the many neighborhood not activities, but the building of offices in hundreds of neighborhoods in Argentina, with which state funds have only partially covered, and the funds of which have been raised by the organization among its members and neighbors, because in these offices, there is not just a political places of organization, but there's social centers with soup kitchens and many social activities. But the crux of the accusation of this judge has to do with there being political militancy in these social centers, which were partly funded by the state. And he says that if this social activity is used for political ends, supposedly, and people participate in political demonstrations, this is diverting or embezzling state funds. This is the center of the attorney and the judge's case against our comrades of the Polo Obrero. So it's clearly a case of political persecution. And on the 24th, we're going to be appealing in this sense. We're going to be demonstrating in the federal courts. And we are also demonstrating against mirroring appeals from the attorneys who actually want the case to go even further. And they're asking for the comrades of the Polo Obrero to be indicted as part of a criminal conspiracy, and saying that they carried out extortion against people to demonstrate, which they have not been able to prove any of these things, of course, in the investigation that they carried out, even with espionage, even bugging telephones and carrying out all sorts of, and police raids on people's houses, on the party headquarters. So a very strong persecution. The movement is not letting itself be coward, to be shut in. It's still in the streets. And the 24th of September, we're going to go very strong. We're happy with a campaign of also international statements as well as within the country. Steve, you yourself have signed on and have promoted this together with hundreds of militants from over 25 countries. And in this sense, we think September 24th, it's important not only to be a demonstration in Argentina, but an international day of action, of solidarity against state repression, and for the freedom to organize, both on a social and a political level here in Argentina.
Well, I think that trade unionists and workers in the United States should join on that day at Argentinian consulates and embassies in the United States. And of course, the repression is also growing here against activists who are fighting to defend Palestine against the genocide. So the growing repression of the capitalists is an international issue. And obviously, solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Argentina is critical in this fight, this international fight, really.
On that point, I want to take advantage of your saying this, to send our solidarity to all those who have been participating in the demonstrations in Washington, in Chicago, and all over the U.S. against the genocide in Palestine, and with the very severe state persecution and repression that we've been seeing, and of course to the comrades also from the Bay Area, right, for being persecuted legally for blocking the highway or the bridge, if I'm not mistaken. So
the Golden Gate 26.
The Golden Gate 26. That's right. So
and the district attorney was getting money from the Zionists, from the Israeli government, getting donations. She has a conflict of interest, and actually, she accused the protesters of being Hamas in a tweet she took down. So she definitely has a bias against the struggle of the Palestinians. So, and she's supported by the Democratic Party here, Mayor London Breed, Gavin Newsom, who conspired, colluded with the Zionists to shut down the protest at UCLA. They were physically assaulted in a criminal conspiracy, really, of Zionists and right-wingers to attack this encampment. So the repression is growing internationally, and I think that the effort has to be fought internationally against this repression, and solidarity with our brothers and sisters wherever they are. So
Exactly.
So I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Guillermo Kane. He is a member of the PO, the Workers' Party in Argentina, and he's a member of the Buenos Aires Parliament and also a professor at the University of Buenos Aires. Thanks for joining our show, and we'll continue this report because I think having these reports is critical for American working people to understand really what's going on in Argentina.
Okay, so thank you, Steve, for this opportunity to reach out to your viewers in the United States and elsewhere. And I'm willing to continue this report on the news here in Argentina to build a closer report between workers of our countries and elsewhere. Thank you very much.